In a recent interview with ESPN MMA, former double champion Rainineer Ditter offered some fascinating insights into potential matchups in the middleweight division. Never one to hold back, Ditter made bold and thoughtful observations, particularly regarding the stylistic differences between two of the division's most dangerous contenders, Khamzat Chimaev and Dricus Duplexus. According to Ditter, when it comes to preparation, Chimaev would actually be the easier opponent to get ready for, not because he's less dangerous, but because his style is far more predictable. While highly effective, Chimaev's approach revolves heavily around wrestling and a submission-heavy ground game. This is a style that elite fighters like Ditter feel more confident preparing for, given its familiarity. Ditter emphasized that he could simulate Chimaev's style in training by bringing in several Dagestani or Chechen wrestlers who utilize a very similar grappling-dominant approach. He added that Chimaev's striking, while clean and effective, is based in traditional boxing fundamentals, making it easier to read and counter during training camp. He would be an easier guy to prepare for, Ditter said candidly. Not that he's an easier fight, but it's more of a typical style. I can bring in a couple Dagestanis and a couple Chechens who wrestle similarly to He boxes pretty cleanly, like real boxing style. However, Ditter made it clear that Chimaev is still a spectacular fighter. What he lacks, in Ditter's view, is the same level of unpredictability and unorthodoxy that defines Dricus Duplexus, he explained, brings chaos to the cage. His timing, movement, and rhythm are unusual and difficult to replicate. Fighters like Duplexus thrive on unpredictability and improvisation, which introduces a greater level of uncertainty and makes them harder to plan for, not necessarily because they're better, but because they're more erratic. It would be harder to prepare for Duplexus, Ditter admitted, but if he wins, he might also be the bigger name. Despite the unique challenges that both men present, Ditter remains laser-focused on facing them in the near future. He believes the next 6 to 9 months will likely land him in the octagon against one if not both of these dangerous opponents. And mentally, he's already preparing. In my mind, I'm fighting both those guys in the next 6 to 9 months, he declared confidently. It's clear that Rainineer Ditter is not afraid of anyone. For him, it's not just about chasing titles, it's about the opportunity to test himself against the best and prove that he belongs at the top of the division. Before we move on to the next story, we have a quick request. We're constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That's why we'd truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support helps us grow and bring you even better content every time. And of course, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what you'd like to see next or how we can improve. Your feedback means the world to us, and we're always listening. Thank you. In a surprising and emotionally charged turn of events, UFC lightweight standout Dan Hooker has voiced his frustration with the organization over a recent ticket controversy. Known for his grit and loyalty, Hooker, nicknamed the Hangman, has long been considered one of the most dependable fighters on the UFC roster, but now, he's making it clear that his days of being a company man may be behind him. Before Hooker publicly called out Arman Tsarukyan for a potential November clash, he had originally set his sights on returning for the UFC's September card in Perth. Despite still recovering from hand surgery that he underwent in March, Hooker intended to travel and support his teammate, Kaio Borralho, who was scheduled for a major fight on that card. However, things took an unexpected turn when Hooker learned that his tickets to the event had been canceled by the UFC. This caught him completely off guard, especially after he had already made the trip to Las Vegas. Speaking on a recent episode of Submission Radio, Hooker shed light on what he believes led to the decision: his absence from a scheduled media appearance, something he says happened due to time zone miscommunication. They tried to get me out of bed at 7:30 in the morning, Eastern Time, Hooker explained. That's 3:30 in the morning in New Zealand. I didn't even go out the night before. I had an early night. But I'm not getting out of bed at 3 a.m. to do just about anything. I slept in and didn't go to the UFC thing. Shortly afterward, Hooker was informed that his event tickets had been revoked. That decision hit hard. So now I'm thinking, I've traveled across the world. I'm recovering from surgery, and they're going to cancel my tickets because I missed one media event, he said. That's why I was ready to rush back and fight injured. But someone behind a desk just crossed my name off a list. Hooker's reaction wasn't just about professional inconvenience, it felt personal. For a fighter who's repeatedly answered the call, taken short notice bouts, and put on thrilling performances for the UFC, the lack of acknowledgement stung. You work in the office, brother. I work in the cage, he said sharply. You'd think there would be a bit more respect for guys who literally give their lives to this sport. The amount of blood, sweat, and tears I've poured into putting on shows for that company, I really thought there would have been more respect, but there's not. Despite the disappointment, Hooker isn't bitter, he's just resolute. And that's cool. Business is business. But now we do things on my terms, he said firmly. I'm not going to break my back for a company that doesn't respect me. With that statement, Dan Hooker made it clear. He's still eager to return to the octagon, but it will be on his own conditions on a foundation of mutual respect. Whether the UFC responds or Dana White addresses the matter in an upcoming press conference remains to be seen. For now, the ball is in the UFC's court. Another major headline in the MMA world involves rising star Khamzat Chimaev, as former UFC fighter and coach Din Thomas has voiced serious concerns about the implications of Chimaev winning a UFC title. When Chimaev first burst onto the UFC scene, he took the sport by storm. He made history with the fastest turnaround between victories in modern UFC history, earning 2 dominant wins in just 10 days. His aggressive style, relentless pace, and finishing ability quickly earned him the label of the next big thing in both the welterweight and middleweight divisions. Fans and analysts alike were captivated by his explosive performances and undeniable potential. However, 5 years later, the narrative has become far more complicated. Despite his early dominance, Chimaev has struggled with consistency due to a series of setbacks. Persistent injuries, illness-related issues, and numerous canceled fights have derailed his momentum. Several scheduled bouts, some high-profile, have fallen through often at the last minute, creating a stop-start pattern. In his career, this inconsistent trajectory is precisely why Din Thomas has raised a red flag ahead of Chimaev's next bout. Speaking on a recent episode of The Bonfire, Thomas didn't mince words. "I'm going to keep it 100 with you. If Khamzat wins, it's a disaster," he said. "You can't tell me a part of you isn't thinking this fight might not even happen." Thomas's concern stems not only from Chimaev's track record of pulling out of major fights, but also from what could happen if he does win the belt. Chimaev has previously withdrawn from matchups against top contenders such as Nate Diaz, Leon Edwards, and Paulo Costa. Some of these cancellations were attributed to medical complications, while others involved weight-cutting issues or logistical problems. The core of Thomas's argument is simple. Even if Chimaev becomes champion, can he be relied upon to defend the title? "I'm not trying to be pessimistic," Thomas continued, "but if he wins, do we trust him to fight again? Can he defend the belt 2 or 3 times a year? That's what the UFC needs." He emphasized that UFC divisions require active champions to thrive. "The UFC runs on momentum," he said. "We need movement in these divisions. I hate when things become static. You've got all these contenders lined up, hungry for their shot, and if Khamzat wins and then disappears or defends the belt once every 14 months, we're going to have serious problems." Thomas's concern is not unfounded. Rumors have already begun circulating that if Chimaev wins the title, his next defense might not take place until UFC's return to Abu Dhabi in October, over a year away. If the title isn't defended until next October, then what are we doing? Thomas asked. Despite the concerns, Chimaev appears to be in good spirits. Currently training in the United States, the undefeated fighter has been seen enjoying himself, even appearing in a recent Instagram clip performing an off-the-wall assist during a casual soccer match, demonstrating his athleticism and upbeat demeanor. Meanwhile, the UFC has taken precautions by booking Kaio Borralho as the backup fighter for the UFC 319 main event, anticipating the possibility of another unexpected withdrawal. Now, all eyes are on the date. Will Khamzat Chimaev show up? And if he does, can he finally deliver the consistency that championship status demands? For fans and the UFC alike, the hope is that this fight happens without disruption. But for Din, Thomas, and many others, the bigger question remains: can Chimaev be the dependable champion the UFC needs? Let's now turn our attention to UFC veteran Matt Brown and his strong stance on why Tom Aspenol must defeat Siriel at UFC 371. In a recent interview with MMA Fighting, Brown emphasized that this fight goes far beyond just a win or loss. On Aspenol's record, it's about the entire future and credibility of the UFC heavyweight division. According to Brown, the division has already suffered significant damage to its reputation, and another misstep could push it further into obscurity. "This isn't just about one fight," Brown stated. "It's about the way the world views the heavyweight division. If Gan goes in and beats Tom, no disrespect to Gan, I like the guy, but the division loses a lot of respect." Brown believes that even if Aspenol puts up a competitive performance, but doesn't come out clearly on top, the outcome still won't be enough to restore faith in the division. Even if Tom goes out there and it's a close fight or he gets dropped and comes back, it doesn't really help, he said. The heavyweight division already has so little respect, and probably deservedly so. He pointed out that for years, the division has struggled to build momentum. Injuries, aging fighters, inactive champions, and a revolving door of interim titles have all contributed to a fractured and inconsistent title picture. Siriel Gan, receiving a third title shot within a short span, has only intensified doubts about the division's direction. That's why, in Brown's view, Tom Aspenol needs to go out and deliver a statement win. He can't just edge out a decision or survive. He has to prove that he's not just another contender, but the one who can bring stability, elite skill, and credibility back to the top. Ron was adamant. Tom has to show that he is the heavyweight division. He's got to prove that too. The world not just by saying he's good, but by demonstrating what a real heavyweight champion should look like. If Aspenol falls short, especially against a fighter like Gane who has had multiple chances at the title and failed, it would be a significant blow. If he loses to Gane, a guy who's already had his opportunities, it sends a bad message. Brown said, "It doesn't just hurt, Tamit brings the entire division down with him." For Aspenol, this isn't just another title fight. It's a chance to carry the torch for a new generation of heavyweights. He represents something different, a fighter with elite movement, high fight IQ, and true finishing ability. But now, it's time to prove that the hype surrounding him is real. The UFC heavyweight title has long carried a legendary aura once worn by icons of the sport. But in recent years, that mystique has faded. Brown is simply saying what many others are thinking: Tom Aspenol must win, not just for himself, but to rescue and redefine the future of the heavyweight division. Anything less, and the division risks sliding further into a Michael Bisping has weighed in on what's quickly becoming one of the most chaotic and controversial storylines leading up to UFC 319. The rise of Khamzat Chimaev, and the growing fear that his potential title reign could be a disaster for the OFC's middleweight division. The buildup to UFC 319's main event between Khamzat Chimaev and Dricus Duplexus has gone from intense to outright volatile, both inside and outside the octagon. What started as a typical high-stakes matchup has now turned into a whirlwind of drama, unpredictability, and public backlash. Khamzat recently crossed a serious line by issuing a chilling threat to kill Duplexus, a message that set the MMA world ablaze. While trash talk is standard in fight promotion, many fans and analysts agree that this particular comment went far beyond acceptable boundaries, injecting real concern into an already heated feud. As if that weren't enough, another twist emerged. Kaio Borralho announced himself as the official backup fighter for the UFC 319 main event, an announcement that blindsided many, especially since just weeks earlier, Nasruddin Imavov had claimed he was the designated standby. Interestingly, both Borralho and Imavov are still scheduled for separate fights in September, meaning Borralho may be forced to cut to championship weight twice in a single month. That kind of physical and mental strain is monumental, as the spotlight now intensifies on the potential of Chimaev walking away from UFC 319 as the new middleweight champion. The reaction within the MMA community has been mixed. While some fans are electrified by the idea, others, especially key voices in the sport, are sounding the alarm. Dean Thomas, a respected coach and analyst, made headlines by declaring that Chimaev's reign could become an outright disaster. For the UFC, his main concern, reliability. Chimaev's track record raises serious doubts. Over the past few years, he has consistently struggled with issues ranging from missed weight to medical complications and last-minute withdrawals. Fights have been canceled, rescheduled, or reshuffled altogether, leaving many questioning whether Chimaev can be trusted as a stable champion. Michael Bisping echoed these concerns during a recent discussion. "That's a fair point by Dean," Thomas Bisping said, pointing directly to Chimaev's spotty record of showing up. According to Bisping, Chimaev has pulled out of 6 fights, a statistic that can't be ignored. He highlighted several examples: a fight with Robert Whittaker that was moved from June to October, and failed bookings with Paulo Costa and Nate Diaz. That's 3 major fights gone. In addition, Chimaev had 3 canceled matchups with Leon Edwards, while Bisping acknowledged that many of those were likely impacted by the COVID-19 chaos. In 2020 and 2021, the volume of disruptions still matters. Even in the case of the Diaz fight, which was scrapped due to a missed weight cut, Chimaev was still salvaged into a fight with Kevin Holland on short notice, but the red flag was already flying. 6 canceled fights is a serious issue, Bisping emphasized. It brings up real questions about consistency, discipline, and whether Chimaev can truly carry a division on his shoulders. The core question now is simple but critical. Can Khamzat Chimaev be a reliable defending champion who shows up, makes weight, and represents the division with professionalism? Or is the UFC taking a dangerous gamble on a fighter who may never live up to the enormous expectations placed on him? As UFC 319 approaches, one thing is clear: the stakes are no longer just about the middleweight belt. They're about trust, consistency, and the future of a division hanging in the balance. Veteran MMA voices, Big John McCarthy and Josh Thomson, recently shared their thoughts on a potential blockbuster matchup between Max Holloway and Nate Diaz for the BMF title at UFC 317. And yes, it's exactly the kind of fight that gets people buzzing. Following Max Holloway's gritty win over Dustin Poirier to retain the BMF belt, his stock has skyrocketed. Meanwhile, Nate Diaz is reportedly eyeing a return to the UFC, and this matchup with Holloway suddenly feels more real than ever. Diaz has several potential opponents lined up: Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler, even Jorge Masvidal, whom Diaz recently defeated in a boxing match just a few months ago. Masvidal himself has been hinting at a return to MMA, further fueling speculation. What makes the Diaz vs. Holloway fight so compelling is the perfect storm of name value and stylistic contrast. Nate might be pushing 40 and arguably past his prime in terms of elite competition, but that's never been the main appeal with him. Fans love his personality, his heart, and his scrappy fighting style. As Josh Thomson noted, the UFC doesn't necessarily build matchups based on rankings or legacy. They focus on what generates hype and numbers. The UFC doesn't really care about its legends, Thomson explained. It's all about the numbers, the spectacle, the clicks. Holloway vs. Diaz wouldn't be a rankings move. It's not about title contention, it's about two fan favorites. Two dogs going toe-to-toe in a fight that could break the internet. Thomson pointed out that Diaz, McGregor, and Holloway are all big draws for the UFC. They're going to keep milking those big names. That's okay. That's why bringing Nate back makes sense. Maybe he's not fighting the best in the world anymore, but those fights will always be exciting. As for the matchup itself, Thomson admitted, "Sure, I like the fight. Maybe it's not the best matchup for Nate, but it's still going to be fun." However, he did express a preference for another potential opponent. "The Michael Chandler fight makes more sense to me. That's a better fight for Nate." Still, he acknowledged that the trilogy bout with McGregor is always on the table, and he even floated the idea of Diaz vs. Colby Covington, not necessarily because of the technical matchup, but due to the marketing potential. In the end, Thomson summarized his thoughts. Stick with the Chandler and Holloway fights. Those are the ones. And if you throw in Colby for the drama, even better. It's not just about the competition, it's about creating moments fans won't forget.